Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Delante Johnson versus Nicklaus Flaz fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon. This is a Patreon requested video, which, you know, if the Patreon wasn't around, then this video wouldn't have been a thing, basically. So, you know, you can request any kind of combat sporting related content of your own, and you know, there's been plenty of great content which has come as a result of it so far. We've got a good community on there, and I really appreciate all the support in which I've had with it so far. But yeah, let's get straight into this one though. And so this fight is a headline fight for a Pro Box TV Friday night card. It's a, you know, amongst a good selection of Pro Box TV cards and shows, which are maybe going under the radar a little bit. And Delante is getting the biggest opportunity now in his career to move away from Top Rank and be now the main headlining slot for that of a Pro Box card. This is his first time main eventing, from what I believe, and you know, not to say that he's never going to box with Top Rank again, but, you know, the way that Top Rank are going, these Pro Box cards could be on the way to being, you know, bigger and actually better than some of the actual Top Rank cards because of, you know, you're not going to go into that too much, but again, Top Rank without ESPN is in a bit of a mess at the moment. Of course, Delante has his 2020 Olympic pedigree. He has a lot of pressure as a result of that, and I believe this fight, in my opinion, will show if he's ready to take that step up. I think this fight is a, you know, a good test on paper. Maybe it's a fight in which looks quite similar to the level of opposition in which he's been fighting previously, but I think this is a, you know, a gradual step up and a necessary step up and a good fight, like I say. And like I say, I think this is a fight that can propel him into a fight, you know, a bit higher up on the rankings. Flaz is, you know, ranked in at least one of the world rankings, and so, you know, at least that would get Johnson a world ranked position in a decent spot if he is to go on to win. And then, you know, from there on he can go on to get some pretty decent contender matchups if he does win this one, you know, in the welterweight division. But, you know, Flaz is a very tough test. In Delante's more recent fights, he has moved up to the welterweight division, and this is now just his second 10 rounder, and I believe now his second or third fight in the welterweight division. In his last fight, he won by unanimous decision versus Boccaccia, and if you are, you know, familiar with these fighters, you'll know that Flaz's, well, only TKO defeat was against Boccaccia, and that was actually a TKO in round one, which of course was back in 2020, if I am correct. And I know that's probably something in which, you know, definitely could be a bit of a factor for this fight. You know, the fact that they both have that similar opponent there, it creates that bit of a narrative, I suppose. And again, you know, it will be interesting to see if Flaz has improved enough to be able to, you know, kind of right the wrongs, I suppose, to an extent, and beat somebody who has been able to beat his former foe and the guy in which, of course, he did get stopped early on against. Flaz is a very tough fighter, and he's got good power punching ability. I mean, I don't think he's got one punch knockout ability, but he definitely has got a high KO ratio. You can't argue with that. He's a Puerto Rican fighter who will just be difficult to deal with. He'll vary up his power well, and he can go on and, you know, he can cause problems, and he is, of course, the more natural fighter at this weight, and he, of course, like I say, is more used to being at this weight, so I think the power is there a lot more for him. He is actually coming off a TKO victory himself against Alan Sanchez, which was a pretty decent win for him, and he's actually on a pretty nice, you know, winning record and, well, winning run at the moment, where I think it's 5 fights unbeaten or 6 fights unbeaten since that loss back in 2020. But his career's been stemmed over quite a long period, I think about 10 years. You know, he's not had a tremendous amount of fights in them 10 years, but 2024 was pretty active for him. I think it was the most active year of his career so far. I might be wrong, but now, of course, 2025, he's coming in back in with the tough tests. Of course, like I say, he's had a couple of losses on his record, but since the Boccaccio loss, he actually had a good win on the road against Jahi Tucker, who himself is a kind of high-level amateur fighter who was, a top-rank up and comer and was promoted well, similar to what Delante Johnson has been in his career. But Jahi Tucker, since then has actually gone on to the middleweight division and has looked really good, to be fair. So since then, Jahi Tucker's looked really good, but Flaz actually managed to get a majority decision upset victory against Jahi Tucker, which was definitely one of the best wins on, the best win on his resume, and that was a fight in which was definitely a fight in which he needed for his career to be able to win, because of course they were starting to give him opponents as the away fighter and in the away corner. But since then, he's been on some quite big cards, but he does look to be now given, I suppose, a little bit more favourable matchups. And not to say I think this is a very tough test for Flaz, but he's definitely moved away from being the away fighter type of fighter and definitely is, back in line to be able to get himself, slowly closer and closer towards a world title opportunity himself. And of course, this fight is going to definitely do him a lot of favours if he does win. To speak about both fighters individually, though, we'll start off with Delante Johnson. And Johnson's a sharp fighter who, has pretty much razor fast hands, and of course, that's probably his best attribute, really, just the speed and the sharpness in his work. He's got good timing and he can really walk you onto a nice shot, which is, coming with a good amount of accuracy as well. You can see that he's patient and he will be able to pick his shots well and twists into them punches quite well, even if they are just singular shots. Again, they're very nicely timed, and perhaps if he just had a little bit more power, he'd be able to go out there and actually deliver a few more stoppages. But, he's somebody who is growing with his power and I think improving, with weight in the weight as well. And yeah, I think he's still improving as a whole. So again, it will be interesting to see if this is the best version of him and if we are, in the best point of his career and if he is ready for these tough challenges. He's somebody who changes levels well. He's able to punch downwards quite well with his combinations. He opens up his hand and kind of punch downwards, which is a bit of a unique shot and can, land quite nicely. He's often very good at taking that kind of shuffle step back, being a bit in and out at times and not too greedy in his work, and he can make you, commit onto a shot and then land you and chop you down with a shot, from taking that little shuffle step backwards. He's relaxed for the most part, looks for his openings, throws down, and then kind of opens up to find the gaps. So he will throw down to up, like I say, he's changing the levels well. He's a mid-range fighter, but he can fight in close pretty well. I think in general he's willing to fight either in close or at a mid-range. I think he's probably best at a mid-range though. He's got good combinations when he uses them. He is able to basically wind opponents when he goes to the body, because the body assaults in which he does land, and with the accuracy and the sharpness that he lands them with, it does really look to wind his opponents, and for the most part he's not greedy as well. Negatives about him, I think, the stuff like the in and out kind of attacks, I would like to see a little bit more of them, because they do look really good when he uses them, but he doesn't always use them enough. Again, with his combinations, that's similar as well. He does keep his hands quite low and a little bit out wide as well, which does allow the straight shots to be able to come through and land on him quite often. He's, I think best at, of course, fighting at his pace, and early on he wants to be fighting at a bit of a slower pace, and if he is against the aggressive fighter, he wants to be able to have that space to be able to land, and time on you, and I don't know if Flaz is always going to give him that space and time. He's, for the most part, only going to be timing you with singular shots, and if he times you with a singular shot when you're coming in, he'll then most likely cover up afterwards. He will sit on the ropes when he is, on the back foot, and always try and fight his way out of bad positions instead of, use that speed and that ability to be able to spin off, where, he could do that against Flaz and probably have success. He allows himself to be hit a bit too much. He's not particularly big or strong for the division. He is a a muscular, strong toned fighter, but he's not particularly big for the division, and I don't think he is going to be a guy who's using his strength and imposing himself that physically. His head's often left exposed. He can be a bit slappy at times because, you know, certain fighters will often kind of open up their gloves a bit more to be able to land shots which are, I suppose, a bit wider of a shot because there's more kind of a range to be able to land on, and a more of a, I suppose, I don't know how to put it, but again, it just makes it a bit more slappy when he opens up the gloves and tries to throw like that a bit more, which does sap the power a little bit. Flaz, as a fighter, though, he's somebody who is often just basically spreading all of the punches in which he throws basically all over the body. He's going to be really varying up the level of punches in which he throws all over, but he also varies up the power really well as well, in my opinion. He is able to double up shots instead of having to pull them all the way back to be able to double them up. A lot of fighters, if they are doubling up, they'll be able to, pair up a jab, but it's, difficult to be able to pair up a hook without having to bring the hook and kind of cock it back because you want to generate a lot of power in the hook. But Flaz isn't always too bothered about that. Like I say, he's varying up the power well, and he can kind of just land two shots without having to pull them back, which, isn't always recommended. You are recommended to pull your shots back, but if you are landing damage still, it can catch opponents out and it can surprise you because you might expect the first one, but you won't expect, the awkward second one coming across as well. He can throw going backwards, which is, something that's difficult. A lot of fighters can't deal with throwing whilst moving backwards. He keeps his right hand pretty much glued to his chin, which is nice as well. He places his punches pretty well, and, I think the place is the right word with that. He maintains a good work rate. He's always throwing in bunches. He wants you to be coming towards him. Again, that will be interesting to see if he's going to be the one, because he will come towards you and he will be a pressure fighter, but I think he does want you to actually be coming towards him for him to be able to, off-put you and then to be able to have a bit of success himself going backwards. He's best in close. He's got a good chin. Yes, like I say, we've talked about him getting stopped in the past, but I still believe he has got a good chin and he seems to never give in. Of course, when you are fighting in the away corner and fighting these, fast, sharp guys like a Jahi Tucker, you might have to lose a couple of rounds to then be able to build into it and to come back, but you have to have the mindset of being willing to go through them, tough early rounds to, like I say, be able to then improve throughout the fight and come into it a bit more. He outworks you, he matches, or he's able to match you punch for punch. If you're somebody who's able to throw a lot, he will match you punch for punch, or he will outwork you. He uses more head movement, in my opinion, than that of Johnson. He keeps things pretty simple for the most part, which is just, it's strong fundamentals in which he has. He's willing to be physical. He maintains that pressure, like I say, and he, for the most part, forces you to be either coming forwards, or if you are on the back foot, he forces you to always be moving. If you are going to be stood toe to toe with him, then I think it could definitely favour Flaz for this fight. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't really deal with the change of levels that well. I think he can struggle a bit at times, landing and dealing with fighters who change levels well and also have good head movement. He does waste quite a significant amount of shots with his combinations. He places punches, but there is times when he's trying to just time you with shots, and them shots just aren't really the best. His chin is often left exposed. I think he's the flatter-footed fighter out of the two. He doesn't really have that much of effect with his jab, so if he is able to, Johnson is able to keep this fight at a jab, then I think he definitely could have quite a bit of success in this fight. He's got less sharp reactions and slower hand speed, so, if Johnson is able to get some movement going and some head movement going, then he could definitely go on to have success for this fight, because I think his speed is superior. He can be made to reach, he can be made to walk onto shots, which definitely could favour Johnson as well. He does waste, like I say, a lot when he's throwing. His punches aren't always that eye-catching either, and he can sometimes, take a worse shot than he actually gives back, and he can be spun off the ropes as well. If he is, in this attacking position, he gets you up against the ropes, he can just be spun off and put himself, his back up against the ropes, which I think Johnson could do, but I just haven't really seen him doing, that too much so far. Apologies about the alarm. Who do I think is going to win this fight, though? I think that Nicklaus Flaz is actually going to win this fight, in my opinion, via majority decision. I think Flaz is going to offer something which is a bit different to what Johnson is used to. I think if Johnson is on the back foot, just landing singular shots, then they might be more eye-catching, but I think Flaz will be able to come through that and walk through that and be able to deal with the not crazily powerful punches of Delante Johnson. I think he could, get him up against the ropes. Like I say, I haven't seen Delante really try and spin his opponents off too much. I think Delante could be the more skilled fighter, but I think this fight definitely could lean in the favour of Flaz just through, like I said, the things in which I've spoke about. And I just see Flaz getting the upset here. He did it to Jahi Tucker, and Jahi Tucker is a bit more of an aggressive fighter than that of Delante Johnson. But again, I could just see him causing another upset and getting. Well, I didn't even know if it would be that big of an upset, but I suppose with the records both fighters, it would be a little bit of an upset. But at that point, he is moving into an actual really good position in his career, Flaz, and like I say, he will then be pushed as the home fighter and should be able to be put in some quite big, ranked matchups, maybe something like a Navila or even an Avanesian, or possibly if you want to push him right in, put him in with somebody like a Paypot who has just fought Liam Paro to a tough fight. These names, they're there, fringe kind of, I wouldn't say quite world contenders just yet, but fringe level guys, which definitely could put you in good stead to get, after that maybe a interim world title fight or a real top contender world title fight. And so, yeah, I hope you did enjoy this video. Like the video if you did, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.